the old Andre tap.
All right. Should be good.
All right. I'd like to call to order the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting for today, which is Tuesday, November 19th. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Rendelman.
Present.
Ms. Wadsworth.
Present.
Ms. Donovan. Mr. McEnroth.
Here.
Mr. Simmons.
Present.
Mr. Morgan.
Here.
And online we have Ms. Hernandez. I'm gonna,
Present.
I don't know if she's unmuted. Are you there, Julie? Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you.
Oh,
I
good.
can barely hear her over here.
Let's try that again. Can you
I'm
say that
present.
again, Julie?
Yep.
Much better.
Okay.
All right. On to the first thing, approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was on September 17th. Do we have any changes, amendments, or anything else on that topic?
I discussed briefly before the meeting that there was a typo in one area where 213 was erroneously identified as 212. And while I don't really think anybody means to move 212 from Milwaukee to Oregon City, I think that's the only change I noticed.
Okay.
Chris also had sent me an email yesterday or a couple of days ago. So that has been updated.
All right. So with those two changes in mind, do I have an approval of, motion for the approval of the minutes?
I move approved minutes as corrected.
Second? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we are on to our agenda analysis. Anybody making changes to our agenda, want to add, delete, anything that's on the topics for today? All right. And judging by the full crowd, I'm assuming we don't have any public comments? So we
Ben,
can, what's that?
did you want to add a Holcomb update?
Oh, so yeah, if we go back to our agenda analysis, I did want to get an update on Holcomb. So if Public Works is able to give us an update there. Thank you.
Yes.
No on the public comments, and so we can move on to our general business. And that is going to be new business and Public Works report.
Okay, first up is our monthly meeting. I think Audrey had given you all some information. We, at Public Works, have asked if we can move the date that we have this TAC meeting every month from the third Tuesday, which has been traditionally, to the second Thursday. And in your packet, there should be a calendar and the 2025 meeting schedule. And I've talked with Ben about this briefly, talked with staff. Ben was okay with addressing this topic. And hopefully, if there are no big conflicts with any of your schedules, it actually works out a little bit better for myself, a little better for Dana, a lot better for me. Dana, with her new position, has, I don't even want to think about how many meetings you have, but it's a lot. So really you'd just be helping myself and Dana. Audrey, there are some dates that moving to the second Thursday are beneficial to her and her private life. So I don't know if you ask for a vote on this, I don't know if anybody would like to chime in.
I was just going to say, generically speaking, so far, does anybody have any regular occurring conflicts on that second Thursday?
Works great for me.
Yeah, I looked at my schedule and that's actually beneficial. Tim?
Yeah, no, I think it's fine, and I think traffic is less on that day too, on
I
Thursdays.
don't know, negatives.
It's a lot
Bylaws
slower.
Need to be looked at.
Right.
And if I might make a suggestion, if you change it, just say to any time and date that's compatible with staff and committee members, and then you'll never have to change it again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, Henry. Yeah. yeah, we will definitely look at the bylaws.
So we could potentially make a motion that would say we are going to move to the second Thursday of each month, conditional upon the changing of the bylaws to
Yeah.
accommodate.
Yep.
Well, I reviewed the
That sounds
bylaws and
reasonable
it
to me.
doesn't require
Does
any,
not.
it does not.
good.
I did
Go on.
review that
Then
in
we can make it much
advance.
more simple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
before we close the topic, anybody else that something popped up on your schedule? No? In that case, do I have a motion that we move our meeting schedule from the current status to the second Thursday of each month?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Excellent.
There you go.
Sincerely, thank you all very much. It is really, really appreciated.
Anything
Thank you.
for the two of you.
So if you're not here.
All right. I think Audrey and I are gonna sort of tag team the December meeting. Hello,
You
Bruce.
made it. Hello, Bruce. All
Shall we
right.
tell him?
You missed the meeting.
We just moved the dates. Oh, that's fine. Second Thursday.
Second Thursday.
Yep.
That's better. I'm not traveling on Thursdays as much.
Oh, good.
There we go.
Works out.
Okay, we'd like to talk a little bit about December. More often than not, we don't have a December meeting, but there are a couple things that may prompt us to see if collectively we would like to have a December meeting. We don't have to, but those things are, and they should be in your packet, the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities program.
I didn't give you
What would
a
you
Yeah,
agenda.
it's essentially a state mandate, related to mostly parking, I think is what,
Okay, on that one, there is a person, contractor that's been working on the project that may want to present in December. We haven't, Audrey's been reaching out to them and they've been a little silent for us, so we don't have confirmation that yes, in fact, they do want to present in December. If they get back to us in a timely fashion and say, yes, I'd like to present in December, I think that would prompt me to say we should have, a regular meeting. Granted, it wouldn't necessarily be as full of agenda as we usually have, but you could have that presentation. And then the other thing was, the interview for Bruce, is that right? Bruce has reapplied to be on the TAC board. Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate that. You've been a,
Actually late too.
well, Audrey's already made a note of your tardiness.
But Thursdays were the selling point of the I want to move to Thursdays.
Oh, that's great.
That is great.
Thursdays work better.
Great.
Perfect.
And what else?
Do we need to
The-
coordinate with the mayor, because she typically does like to be present on those?
Yeah, so I'll reach out to the mayor to confirm she'll be able to make it, or it's optional. She doesn't have to actually be here. She likes to be here. The other part was that the chair and vice chair positions expire at the end of the year as well. And so depending on how we do, we'll have the interview. And I thought if we have the December meeting, we can have those votes or discussions at that time. If we don't have a December meeting, because we don't have a topic, we could combine it with the interview. And so I don't know how you want to lead that discussion, but you'll want to discuss vice chair and chair positions beginning January, or vote December for January.
And with that, I should point out that I'm not going to be back here as vice chair or a member. I didn't ask to be renewed. So interviewing, I don't care about too much, other than it'd be nice to make sure you get good people. But outside of that, this might be my last meeting.
Wow.
Wow.
How long have you been,
Service, Henry, you've been here for a while.
yeah, how long, Henry?
Oh, if I got my time right, it's 8 years.
Yeah, that seems
Great.
about right.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
So-
thank you, Henry. That's a lot of years
So I just
to be
thought I'd
dedicated to
warn
this.
people that,
Yeah,
this position will be open.
okay, thank you.
Okay?
So I would probably throw this out that, pending having a topic agenda presentation, those are discussions we definitely could have at that time. If that opportunity arises, send out an email, let us know I'm available on that date, so that's not a conflict. And if it doesn't come to fruition, then we can talk about just go ahead and cancel that meeting and move on to January.
Great.
So are we gonna have a December meeting?
We're tentative on the December meeting,
What day?
dependent on, it would be the third Tuesday of
Which
the,
is right before Christmas.
it is, and so that's our regularly scheduled
Event?
Tuesday,
That's
yeah.
Christmas Eve.
Is it really Christmas
Oh.
Eve?
I was looking at the second
think
Thursday,
so.
but you're right.
Oh, you're talking about Thursday or?
Yeah,
It would
I
be
was
the
looking at the new
17th,
dates, not the
December
old.
17th.
Yeah, it'd be December
December
17th.
17th?
So
Okay.
that actually,
Okay.
now that I'm looking at the correct dates, I will not be here.
December 17th?
Yeah.
Okay. Would we want to push forward with the second Thursday starting in December of, so it'd be December 12th?
That actually would work with that.
That would be nice.
So I think maybe what we could do is just push that a little earlier, do the second Thursday.
So it'd be the
Is
12th?
that okay for
Yeah.
both of you?
12th would work for me.
Okay,
Okay,
it works for us.
Okay, so let's put a pin in that one and
I'll
we'll,
send an updated invite
Perfect.
tomorrow.
okay, December 12th.
Yeah.
We'll just move our third.
Will that work for you, Bruce? Because we would do the interviews ahead of time too.
And you be the man of the hour, so you gotta be there.
The interviews usually start around like 5:45, but if there's just the one,
We might need an hour for his.
especially.
Yeah, it should be good. Yeah, I'll fly home the night.
Is he the only one that's up?
Flight that night or early morning on the 12th.
Great.
Is he the only
I
one
won't
that's
hang out, going to Alaska, I can stay there and hang out, but. Maybe I'll just go early, maybe I'll just stay like on Friday.
I like it.
Don't we have any applicants for December?
We have Bruce, but
Because
we
the
don't
only
have
one-
any others.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still open and our communications department is pushing that out to the community, so there could be more interest. I've received one other application, but it went to all of the committees and her real focus is on the budget, focused area, not TAC. So
And we can fill those throughout the year, not just in an open period, correct?
that's right, yeah. Just want to have the applications about 2 weeks before the meeting so that I have time to pull it all together. Yes, if you were to come back, the idea is just that you reapply by completing the application. We would do the interview, like with Bruce, we are. Oh, you mean for yourself? No, I don't, I think we discussed it, that if there's nobody to fill her position, it'll be okay.
Right, it would just be
You
open
wouldn't-
until somebody from the
You wouldn't
chamber.
continue on, you're termed at 12/31.
If they don't find somebody, I told them that I would be willing until somebody
Okay,
stepping myself in the back with that one. I don't mind to go a couple more months, but I don't,
yes. So if you want to do that, we can talk more afterwards and make sure we get that all lined up. Does that make sense? Okay. That's good to know. Thank you.
Outreach to
Mhm.
can we, as TAC
Mhm. I think it makes sense that you could talk to your community about the openings.
Yeah, absolutely. So more to come on the December meeting or not. Again, it depends on if we have a full-fledged meeting, if the person that wants to present on the climate-friendly and equitable communities. If not, we'll have a short, get the interview done and potentially interviews if we have somebody else. And call it good at that.
Okay. All right. Looks like revenue.
You're up.
I'm up. So apologies for not having anything in the packet, and I've got just two kind of basic slides. I just did not get this pulled together before my vacation, and so I quickly pulled this together today. So I thought I would just kind of walk you guys through a little bit of our current transportation funding sources. So in our budget, we have a fund called the Street Fund. And so in that fund, we see revenues from the State Highway Trust. So that includes the city's share of vehicle fuel taxes, our share of the state vehicle registration, and then the city's share of truck weight mile fees. And those rates is all set by the state, it's collected by the state, and then we get a monthly disbursement. Additionally, in our street fund, the fairly new Clackamas County vehicle registration fee, the city does get a portion of that. And so, generally that's what we kind of refer to as our gas tax fund. Those monies have to be spent in the right of way on transportation infrastructure. So, we use that to fund our PGE bill for our streetlights, to keep those running, traffic signals. My brain is kind of blanking, but it funds our staff in the street fund as well. And street signs, striping, all the things our transportation team takes care of. Maintenance on the traffic signals, and then after we fund personnel and materials and services, then what's left in that line becomes what we have available for capital outlay or construction projects. We also have our transportation SDC, and I think that was last adopted, the methodology was updated in 2019. We adopted those newer rates. And transportation SDCs or all SDCs have two components, a reimbursement fee. So as a new developer builds something, they're buying into the projects we've already built that have capacity left in them. So if we've built, a new lane or a turn pocket that has capacity left, then they're partially buying into those built projects. And then the other component, the improvement fee, is for future projects. And so we can keep those revenues separated in that SDC fund. Those improvement fees have to be used on capacity expansion projects. The reimbursement fee has a little more flexibility because we've already used monies to build the capacity, so we're essentially getting reimbursed, hence the kind of reimbursement component of the fee. And so we do have some flexibility to utilize those funds for things not tied to capacity improvements. And so we do keep those revenues separate. We started that transition this July in our budgeting. And then we've also got pavement maintenance utility fee. So that's that monthly fee on the utility bill that funds our paving program. And those monies are used for just paving and the ADA ramps associated with those paving projects. We're legally required to upgrade those ADA ramps when we pave a roadway. And so that is essentially the only item besides asphalt that fund pays for, is those ADA ramps.
Striping.
If the striping's part of the paving program, but if it's our annual striping, I think
That's separate.
we pay for that out of the gas tax or street fund. So those are our ongoing, consistent revenue sources. I did list federal, state, and local grants. That does make up a good portion of many of our budgets. And so it does, we can show that in there as well.
On the street fund or the highway trust and the county fees, how is that derived? Is it by population? Is it by road mile? Where do they determine what we get versus neighboring cities?
I believe it's population-based for the state highway fund.
Okay.
I'm trying to look through this document. So in our 2013 TSP, we had a 8-page document on funding assumptions. Audrey's going to send that out to the group after the meeting if you want to take a deep dive into it. It is a little bit dated, but the content is generally still current. It's the dollar amounts that would be a little bit old. They're 11 years old for revenues.
We can look in there for structural things. Okay.
Yes. Any other questions on these current funding sources?
So when the the truck weight mile fees, is that actually for the driven on the Oregon City roads?
I don't believe so. In all honesty, I just keep an eye on the number, and as long as it only gets bigger, then I don't
Yeah.
question it much. ODOT puts out a projection by agency, and I don't even think it separates the fuel tax, the vehicle registration fee, and the weight mile fees. That's all that magic black box.
Because I'd be interested in when you think of 213, if there's 50,000 vehicles a day that travel on that road, I'd say over a third of them are trucks. You know, just knowing my own commute, it'd be interesting if they're actually peeling that, and then the 205, you know, off stuff, and then the McLaughlin, you know, what's that, 99? Yeah, or they just like, all right, we'll just give you 23%, you know, of the county revenue or something.
Yeah, it does say those three are based on a per capita basis to cities and counties. And the split on that is referred to as the 50-30-20. So the state keeps 50%, they distribute 30% to the counties and 20% to the cities. I don't have good projection for our numbers. What I can share is the state legislature has ramped up some work groups to talk about statewide transportation funding. So you might recall tolling was put on pause. It was really kind of a pause button. The state legislature has this session to have discussions about how to fund transportation in the state. And if they don't come up with a solution, that pause button comes off and tolling is back on for discussion. So they've kind of ramped up these work groups. There's 3 or 4 of them. One of them is discussion about the House Bill 2017 that talked about raising the gas tax and set that all up. And the promises to deliver projects and how we're going to deliver those projects that were promised. There's a couple of other work groups ramping up so that they can provide the 2025 legislature the information they need to have that discussion at a state level about transportation funding. So, I mean, we set that rate for the pavement maintenance utility fee. That's generally indexed 3% each year. The SDC goes up by the CPIW, so those are updated once a year from, once they're adopted. And the street fund it doesn't have an inflation, a standard inflation. So, if you think about, we have less vehicles purchasing fuel, and there's no inflation to it, it eventually becomes not enough revenue to cover current day expenses. And so you've maybe heard and seen some of ODOT's discussion points about they don't have money to plow roads. because there just isn't enough in the funding for them. I know City of Portland's had some discussions, those bigger agencies where, there's so much revenue from those sources, a small impact on that to them is really big. We've been able to weather things like COVID. We saw a decrease in gas tax revenues because people weren't driving. Everyone was staying home, they were working from home. And those, we've been able to kind of manage those minor adjustments. Bigger agencies like City of Portland and ODOT, those are much bigger impacts to their budgets. And so really, I think the funding discussion is at the state level right now, and hopefully they can resolve it at a statewide level. If not, then I think many jurisdictions will have to discuss how they fund their transportation system.
So I know at a local level, you've been instrumental in getting the last bullet point of grants over to us. With your elevated position, has there been a baton handoff to some of that? Or are you still our grant writer? Or where are we gonna be looking, and who's our new best friend in that department?
Well, we currently have our transportation project engineer position posted. I'm hoping we can find someone that can both deliver capital projects and support us in grant applications. Just to share currently, we've got 5 applications in various stages. And at this point, because we are short-staffed, I'm hiring consultants. So I'm managing them, I'm kind of feeding them the pieces, they're feeding me back the technical work. So we're not missing out on applications. If there's no more questions on current funding, my next slide has a list. And these came out of this technical memo in the TSP, where it really just tried to list all the options for potential transportation funding. So general fund, in theory, is an option. The general fund often has a lot of asks of it, and the budget committee decides the small portion of the city's budget that is discretionary and how they spend that. I don't think they've ever chose to spend it on transportation.
In regards to transportation, the only thing I know of that does get general fund dollars is the municipal elevator for staffing, maintenance, things like that. The dollars are budgeted within the transportation budget, and finance, by whatever means they do, will take general fund money and put in that transportation budget. But again, it's really only for the elevator.
If I can have an opinion, I would say you should generally hit the local fuel tax first, if only because we're authorized under the state statutes. And having had experience with urban renewal and local improvement districts, and especially debt financing, I find it hard to see any real benefit to working with those. The local improvement districts are good for things like water lines, sewer pipes, and that sort of thing, or new street conversions. But you're also cannot use it for maintenance purposes, which is a big gotcha. And I've worked with Oregon City under debt financing, and I will tell you that it was not pleasant. All we could do was finance maintenance crews. We couldn't do any sort of construction outside of what the bonds were sold for. And that limitation really hurt. So that's my 2 cents.
So I haven't dug into it, and I'm not familiar with the process to adopt a local fuel tax. It is a voter approval. I think Portland has had a handful of vehicle fuel tax that they've done through the voters. These notes from the 2013 TSP say there was 22 cities and 2 counties in Oregon that had them at that time. Milwaukee had one, Canby, Tigard, Multnomah County, and Washington County were listed specifically.
I kind of think that it's gonna be a hard sell for a sidewalk fee, but never know. We've got, first thing would think we need to do is to document very carefully where the need is, so that it can be shown that there's a real need and it'll be spent for that, because frankly, we've got the street fee, but based on the presentation we had a couple of months ago, it seems to me that only the newer streets are ever going to be taken care of, because you're not raising enough money to take care of the really bad ones, and especially it seemed to be in McLaughlin neighborhood. And so it seems like those streets that are really bad need total reconstruction. We'll probably never get it under the deal about keeping the most streets in the highest possible level that their current city's currently operating under. And I would see the same sort of an objection showing up for a sidewalk fee and saying, why should I pay for sidewalks on Claremont when I've got them in my neighborhood? Now, if it was a way of being able to say, the sidewalk fee can be used to improve and to replace rotten sidewalks that are existing, then that might be an easier sell.
So the city of Tualatin has, it's a sidewalk slash tree program, right? I think Sherwood might have one. You know, Milwaukee did just a fee for pedestrian improvements, sidewalks, things like that. I looked into this when I was in Tigard. There was a lot of talk about, you know, pedestrian access and mobility. So the city of Tualatin model, they've broken the city up, I think, into 4 or 5 areas, okay? And Public Works Director Dan Boss, and this is, I think, going back 15 years ago,
Yeah.
was able to lobby to the citizens, hey, we want to charge you this fee, right? And their promise was to hit each quadrant, you know, do quadrant one year, or it might take a couple years to do it, but eventually they would get around the city and keep going and going. But again, it was in conjunction with trees that were upheaving the sidewalk, which is, as we all know, a big problem here in Oregon City. It's a big problem in most towns, frankly. And it wasn't a fee, as I recall, that was enough for the city to pay for everything. There was a fee, and if a citizen wanted to partake in the program, and I'm going off memory here, it's many years, they would still have to pay some. There was a cost sharing, and I might be getting that mixed up with Sherwood. I can look into it and report back. But my point is, Tualatin, their program is successful, and it's well liked by the citizens. It does take quite a bit of staff time to drive and walk around and document the lifted sidewalks and the trees and all that. So it is time consuming, but Tualatin has some pretty darn nice sidewalks, even in older neighborhoods. Now, Tualatin as a town isn't nearly as old as Oregon City. Not nearly. So you have to take that into account. I think you are correct, your last point, Henry, where you said if the premise is to fix, you know, old sidewalks that are buckled and heaved, I think that probably would go over a little better. This is just my gut feeling. Then no, we want to charge you a sidewalk fee to go build new sidewalks. But there's people that obviously want new sidewalks too. The new sidewalk discussion is very difficult because if you live in an old neighborhood that doesn't have sidewalks, we probably don't have the right of way to put the sidewalk there. So, and same with, there'd be no ADA ramps, things like that. So, yeah, I guess my point is I was always pretty impressed with Walton and their sidewalk / tree program. And so it's doable. It's, we as a city would need to decide or get direction, frankly, from our electeds. If that's a priority for them and have us look into it and try to formulate a program to address it.
So what if you have an old neighborhood that wants sidewalks? Can they issue a bond to construct those in those old neighborhoods and then tax those people who live in that community that are gonna benefit by it? And then pay it out over, 10, 15 years or whatever the bond rate's gonna be. And so that's the benefit for them, to be modernized. Could
That sounds to me, and Dana and Henry, you touched on the LIDs, it sounds like a local improvement district, how you explained it. I don't know, Dana can probably chime in. I've never dealt with anything like that, Tim. It sounds plausible, for sure. But I think the way you explained it, to me, sounds like you just explained the definition of a local improvement district.
So if you split those and have the people who want new sidewalks in their neighborhood, somebody who already has a new sidewalk is not gonna be happy about paying for that. But they would be happy about maintaining the sidewalks in their area, so maybe if you can pull that out, and that's a benefit to them. It's just like sometimes when the city comes by and says, oh, would you like to hook up to sewer? It's $10,000 hookup fee, whatever, and there's everybody standing out there like, yeah, I want to get rid of my septic tank. I know in Tigard, there was a big thing over there by Fowler Middle School, all down there, they had, they were all on septic, all those homes, and finally the city said, okay, we're gonna put sewer in here, and they were all standing out there. Now, there was a few holdouts, but eventually they got hooked up, and then they didn't have to take care of their septic. But that's the benefit of those neighborhoods. And if they want it, then they vote for it and say, yeah, we'll go for it, we'll put the bond out. That way they're not getting hit with a massive bill up front. And then the city will have the money to do the job on a larger scale for cost cut, for cost savings.
Yeah.
And then like you do with the pothole thing, where it's tacked on the sewer bill. Then that does work because I've used it. I've called and said, hey, there's a pothole here. And you guys go out and fill it up and there's like no delay, getting it done. So I think that's an effective program.
Good.
So I talked a little bit about the fuel tax. I'll just share, urban renewal district is another option for funding transportation projects. The city currently has an urban renewal district. It's a little bit up in the air if the district is continuing or not continuing, and, I don't have all the details, but in theory, it's a funding source if they choose to move forward with projects. Tim kind of mentioned that local improvement district, essentially 2/3 of the affected property owners have to agree to it. And I believe a lien is placed on the property, for their share of the funds. The struggle sometimes with a local improvement district is the city has to fund upfront those costs. And if I don't have the cash to build it myself, I'm not sure I would have the cash to build it and then charge the property owners and wait for them to make their payment. Which sort of leads us to the next piece, which is debt financing. The Oregon City Charter does not allow the city to take on debt greater than $25,000. So essentially, I cannot use debt to build a project without voter approval. So I have to build with what cash I have in the bank. And then the sidewalk fee. And so that was based on the discussions that we've had previously about Milwaukee's fee, where they're building all their sidewalks with their their safe fee, safe access for everyone fee, that they've created as part of their, essentially kind of a citywide focus, on getting people walking and biking to locations besides driving. And then I just put up other for, if others are aware of things. We do have, it isn't a funding source, but kind of dealing with our tree issue, we have set aside funds for reimbursement for property owners that move forward with sidewalk repairs and replacements due to trees. So there, we have set aside some of that gas tax street fund to go towards that. And that was at the commission's direction. So I mean, that's kind of that overview. Are there questions about those?
Yeah, so in my neighborhood, I think it was 2 years ago, they came through and they put barriers, they dug up around all the trees to prevent the sidewalks from lifting. I don't know if that was a city requirement, new, or that was the builder's requirement to come back and get that done, or they forgot to do it.
It is in our city standards on planting trees. We don't retroactively go back and make people do it. And I don't know how long that standard has been in place. But if you're a developer, and in your development, you're gonna have street trees, we have the specifications and, drawings of how they need to do it, and root barrier is required.
Root barrier, yeah, that's the word. So,
I think one of the developers missed it and we caught it on our punch list during our inspections. I vaguely recall a developer having to go back and install it after the fact.
in my neighborhood probably, along with punching the irrigation lines. And we found out later, when the irrigation season came and we had all these hyzers going. So what if you, for these street sidewalk things, what if they use that as a deterrent on the old neighborhoods of putting root barriers in to try to prevent the sidewalks from lifting?
I'm not sure I understand.
So if you're going back to neighborhoods where you are suspecting that there's going to be a higher propensity of lifting sidewalks, is there a way to go in early or like now and put root barriers in to protect the rest of the sidewalk?
The trees would have to be very, very young juvenile trees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
otherwise they're pretty aggressive.
Under the category of other, what's the feasibility of red light cameras or setting up speed traps in Oregon City to provide funding for our transportation?
So when I started here 8 or 9 years ago, I worked a little bit with the police department. We had a vendor that came in that was looking at red light running cameras. Again, going off memory, but I think the 2 intersections that flagged with enough violations were 213 and Beaver Creek, and 9090 and 14th. And most of those violations were right turn on red. So those cameras are set up that we use similar like loop detection that we use for traffic signals. So the loops can sense a car going over it. Those same loops can be used to kind of sense the car and the speed it's going. So, you approach a red light, you're intending to make a right turn, you can look to the left, see there's no car coming, and you still make your turn. And the kind of general consensus from the police department was they probably weren't gonna ticket someone for that in a in-person situation, because they've, the person looked, there was no one coming. And if those were the violations that were gonna be issued with a red light running camera, the chief at the time didn't feel comfortable moving forward with the red light cameras.
I'll give you a perfect one. Prairie Schooner, 213. You'll see 3 cars go through a red light just because they don't want to wait, because they're all coming from Home Depot. And they're usually commercial vehicles, and I watch it every morning because I get stopped at that traffic light. Because when I come off Redlands Road, you cannot go from Redlands Road all the way to 213 without stopping, because the way the signals are timed. And you'll see them, 3 going and I've got a green light. And if you want a revenue source, put one right on the medium and you'll have 3 every light change. And we'll be like a Las Vegas lottery.
I think typically the cities, I can't confirm this, typically cities that have red light cameras, that revenue goes to the police.
It
It goes to
usually,
the police.
it usually covers the police officer's time because each of those tickets, although so in Tualatin, the system is ran by a third-party vendor. And the vendor kind of does that first review, but a police officer does have to review it and be part of the, yes, that's a violation. And so there is police officer time. So in Tualatin, the revenues go back into the police fund.
Same with Tigard. Tigard was just dipping their toe in the water when I left 6 years ago. They have since put, I don't know how many,
There
2
are
or
a bunch
3.
of them. They're all over the place.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they depend on those things.
yeah. But again,
But that, if it's supporting them to be able to have more officers, I mean, I don't think Oregon City would not benefit by having that revenue to get a 4th officer at night at the, the 10 to 7 a.m. crew. Because, apparently, I guess, I don't know if it's staffing or it's money, but when I've talked to the police, they said there's only 3 officers for the whole city late at night. And that's a lot of space to cover for 3 people. So I don't know if that helps their revenue source to provide another patrol car or 2. I think that'd be something. It's the only way you change that behavior at Perry Schooner is to start ticketing people, because it's blatant. People just, and their trucks and pulling trailers and stuff like that. I mean, very, very dangerous, on there. And that's just one of the areas that I notice the most. The other ones I don't have any, testimonial for those, but on the other hand, it's kind of nice that we don't have them here. So,
All right, thank you.
I don't have much else. I think what I would maybe wrap it up with is, I think we'll follow what the legislature's discussing related to transportation funding. See what that looks like as we come out of that, session in 2025. And maybe the discussion comes back after we understand what that statewide funding discussion looks like. Anytime we're asking to create a revenue source, the other thing we have to think about is who's already asking at the city commission level. So there's a lot of discussion right now about parks maintenance and how we're funding that. If I were prioritizing public works, long-term water funding, I have a 3% rate cap. Inflation isn't less than 3%, so eventually our expenses are going to outpace our revenues. So letting the state look at transportation funding, see what the outcome of that is. Starting to look at water revenues and how we're maintaining our water system. And then for me, the transportation would be kind of after water, type of thing. But it doesn't mean that we couldn't talk about what our preferred option might be after the legislature finishes things and we understand what that looks like.
Alrighty.
all right, I just have a little presentation on our winter weather program and what we do. So in the month of November, our mechanics start going over our trucks and equipment and servicing everything, making sure everything is working properly. That has been going on for probably the last 3 weeks, 2 weeks for sure, to make sure that we have everything loaded up, everything's ready to go the first snow or ice event that we have. When we get into the more cold temperatures where snow and ice is likely, it's myself and Jason Thornburg mainly that are glued to our various weather reports. We look at several. We try to pick the one that makes us most happy, but sometimes that doesn't work. So lots of time spent, again, looking at weather. When we do have a ice or snow event heading our way, depending on the direction, Doppler radar is handy. And in Oregon, he and I use the trip check cameras, because many times the event is coming from the south or southwest. And with the trip check cameras that are all over, you can go south, however far south you want to go in Oregon, and see, yep, okay, there's temperature, I can literally see it snowing, and you can watch the progression as it gets closer to town. I think we've covered this before, we do have 5 cameras here in town that are on trip check, 4?
I think we have more now. I think they're,
Okay.
the most recent batch just got added.
So we have trip check cameras in the city limits, that the county maintains and runs for us. But if you go to ODOT's trip check page, they're on there, and you can see them. So weather reports, cameras, when we know an event is coming, the timing is always a hard part. It rarely starts snowing or freezing at 7 o'clock in the morning when we all show up. So as you might imagine, there's a lot of coordination with the transportation crew, and, who's gonna come in at midnight, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. We've got a really good dedicated group of people that are very good at what they do in regards to snow removal and dealing with the ice. And we just don't have a problem getting people to come to work and work these long hours. If it's an event that lasts several days, often the water, wastewater, and storm departments will assist with personnel, because everybody in Public Works that's in operations and out in the field has a CDL. And many of those staff members do have experience plowing, sanding, running a de-icer, and if they don't, we put them in to ride shotgun with an experienced driver for a while. You'll swap seats. So oftentimes you'll see in a winter event, you have a person driving a dump truck with a plow and a sander, or a person driving one of our 1-ton crew trucks with a de-icer machine on the back, and there's 2 people in there. And you'll think, why are there 2 people in there? It takes 1 to drive the truck. It's because we're training somebody. And go to the next slide, please.
That's how steep this,
We work very close, I'll let this video play, there's no sound to it, but that's my transportation manager, Jason Thornburg, in the backhoe. We're scraping off that bridge, and to give you an idea, the accumulation, how slick it was.
It's crazy.
It was kind of cool. I think that's the most hits the city's ever got from a posting. At any rate, one thing I'd like to add is we work very closely with Oregon City Police Department.
That's how steep this.
And what I mean by that
slippery
is,
this watching the chunks.
if the timing of the event is unsure, if nothing's happened, by the end of business, or we don't think anything's gonna occur just after, we'll have our folks go home, we'll have a plan who's gonna show up, and frankly, it's a guesstimate sometimes on time. Weather reports, what we're seeing, on when we have personnel respond, so it varies greatly. We work with the police because they have personnel on 24/7, right? We work closely with the 2 captains, the police sergeants. We give them the names and phone numbers of our personnel and what time they're going to show up to work. They give us their sergeants' names and numbers. And, typically when things happen after hours, Public Works, Joe Citizen, or the police will just call the on-call number. In snow events, we instruct the police, don't call the on-call person, call Jason, Wes, myself, because we'll let the police know, hey, we're gonna have folks showing up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Great. We go home, it starts snowing or getting icy at midnight, things are getting slick, the police will reach out to us and we'll go, okay, and we call our folks and say, come in a little earlier. So that coordination with the PD is really key. We have a great relationship with the PD. They like it because it's a benefit to them. We like it because, we don't have to pay people overtime just to sit here and twiddle their thumbs waiting for it to snow. All of our streets are sanded, plowed, and de-iced on a priority basis. Most of you probably have seen our sanding maps. It's on our city website. and it's color-coded, priority 1, 2, and 3. Priority 1 roads get done first. There are arterials, collectors, routes to the hospital, things of that nature. Some more hilly areas, et cetera. Traffic volume, right? So we're trying to get the roads that the majority of people are going to need to drive on. If the event lasts long enough, meaning 2-3 days, and the event kind of subsides, so where we can treat the priority 1 roads and get them drivable, then we'll branch out to the priority 2, and so on and so forth through priority 3. I will tell you that it would have to be a really long event, and it would have to be just the right weather conditions for us to get to those priority 3 streets. It just, because typically, well, I'll put it this way, many events, we do the priority 1 streets, and it keeps snowing and icing, and we have to go back around and do the priority 1s. We have to keep those in good a shape as possible. So it's not like we can do the priority one roads and call it good and move on. No, we end up spending a lot of time on the priority 1 roads. We have a lot of assets to deal with the winter weather. We've got 2 pickups that are equipped with 200-gallon de-icer tanks. We have 2 10-yard dump trucks equipped with plows and sanders. We have 1 8-yard dump truck equipped with the plow. That's that old International that Henry bought years ago. We have a 2-yard dump truck equipped with a plow and sander, and another 2-yard dump truck equipped with just a plow. We have a grapple truck, and the grapple truck is, often we get branches and trees down in the street. There's a picture up there that shows a good example. The grapple truck is a 5-ton truck, probably a 20-yard box on the back. It's quite long, and it literally has a grapple arm that you can pull up to a pile of debris, and the operator can grapple it and load it in the truck and off to the next pile of debris. So we consider that part of our winter snow fighting equipment. We've got actually 2 wood chippers for clearing debris. Parks has one we can borrow, and Streets has a pretty new one. We've got a whole bunch of chainsaws, 3 backhoes, a front end loader, and all the trucks are equipped with enough tire chains to chain everything up if we had to. Any questions on winter weather preparedness and response?
So when you use the de-ice, does that do any surface damage to the roadway itself? Or how long do you have to have it on there before it?
We haven't seen any, it's not really reported that magnesium chloride necessarily damages the street surface. It is caustic to a certain extent. We've not seen any damage to our streets that is any way related to or relatable to magnesium chloride. It does make the back of our trucks rust like you can't believe, though. So even then, we've instructed our operators when they get done de-icing, and thank you for that prompt. I missed a section in my notes about de-icing I need to talk about. At the end of their shift, and they're going to park the truck, take the time in the nice heated wash bay and wash the back of the truck off really good, because it will
eat away at it.
rust off. Yeah, yep. And for you folks in your personal cars, if you're driving on roads that have those telltale marks where you can see the de-icer, when you get a chance and it's not totally frozen, grab your garden hose and give your car a little wash underneath and on top. It'll just help out. The county uses a lot of mag chloride. We use quite a bit. With the mag chloride, preferably, we would use mag chloride over sand. Because with sanding rock, you've got to go back after the event and sweep it all up. That being said, there are some events where mag chloride is absolutely the right answer, and there's some winter events that mag chloride is useless and you don't even take the trucks out, and that's snow events. Mag chloride is very, very effective at treating thin, more black ice events, and we have a lot of those. To combat that, if Mother Nature cooperates and it's going to be dry going into that really cold temperature, we will pre-treat the streets with the mag chloride. And unless it rains to wash it away, let's say it doesn't freeze, but it does rain, the mag chloride will wash off the road. If it doesn't rain, it can last on there 3, 4, 5 days. And traffic will eventually wear it off. So that's a very effective pre-treatment thing that we do a lot of. That often occurs at 3 o'clock in the morning, before citizens are out on their morning commute. But again, winter weather varies so much. This is what we do at this time of the day. It just varies so much. There are events too where we'll pre-treat with mag chloride. It freezes, great, mag chloride is working, and then it starts to snow. And the mag chloride will help keep the snow from adhering for a while. But if it gets really more than a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch or more of snow, it will just sit on top of that mag chloride and start to stack up. At that point, you park the mag chloride trucks and you get your sander and plow out. And then towards the end of the event, if we have a thaw and the snow is thawing, but it's going to freeze that night, but it's bare pavement, we will let it freeze because, again, we can't apply the mag chloride on wet pavement. It has to be dry. But we do have times where, again, it's thawed, you can see bare pavement, you just kind of got to wait for it to freeze and form that black ice, and then you can get the mag chloride back out because, as I mentioned, it is very effective at dealing with the thin black ice. So,
It's a science.
yeah. All right, and lastly for me, I just wanted to put a little blurb on our new patch truck. We just got it this year. We had an existing patch truck that I think we had it for, 15 plus years, and it was just getting long in the tooth and due to be replaced. So this new patch truck allows us to go to the plant, get a load of asphalt. We use it primarily for pothole patching, and the box is literally heated. There's an oil that surrounds the box, right? And there's propane burners that heat that oil up, and that oil retains heat really well. So we can get a load of mix in the morning. I think it holds 4 tons of asphalt. And with that system, we can have it in there for hours and hours, and it'll still come out at 300 plus degrees. And there are times where we have paving jobs, small ones, utility patches or potholes that we just can't do safely during the day. We'll get a load of asphalt towards the end of the day, park the truck, leave it plugged in, because there's an electric heater in it also. Leave it plugged in, the staff will come in at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, unplug the truck, the mix is still warm and good, and go out and pave the patch. Some agencies, I don't think we've done it, will put cold patch in the truck, especially if it's really freezing out and no asphalt plants are open. And it'll heat that cold patch up, which does help it. You don't have to heat up cold patch, but when it's 35 degrees and you got to patch a pothole here and there, it does work pretty well. It does have a tack tank on it, so you prepare the pothole or the cut, make sure it's clean, and you spray the tar, basically, or emulsion, and that helps the new asphalt bond to the old asphalt, and it comes prepared with its own asphalt, its own tack tank. Carries a plate compactor, it carries sand, it carries water for the plate compactor, all the hand tools. There's a small bin, so if you go to a pothole or you're doing a utility cut that's cold patched, their crew can dig it out, and they've got a bin right on the side of the truck they can just load that material onto and haul it off. It's a really, really handy tool in our toolbox. In regards to paving, we tell contractors it has to be 40 degrees and rising for them to pave the road or do things like that. But occasionally, we have emergencies. We have to deal with typically potholes, and we just have to put some asphalt on the ground, even if we know we'll have to dig it back up at some point. And with this truck, in inclement weather, it allows us to do this, because if you just put asphalt in the back of a dump truck and it's raining or that cold, it'll be not usable in a very short amount of time. Okay. Any questions on the patch truck?
I just want to say that it's amazing how much we do with a small amount of resources. It seems like, our per capita amount of resources for public works is lower than average for cities. And then we have certainly higher than average difficulty with all the hills. And what I see going around town during a snow event is people moving even up Washington Street, 7th, Malala, around the hospital you mentioned is an important area, and people are moving in those areas and able to get to the hospital in an emergency during snow events, which is huge. And I have it's a such great benefit to citizens that you do this work, and the patch truck is part of it because, like you said, potholes are showing up during snow events too, more frequently.
Right, yeah. Thank you, I really appreciate that, Raymond, thank you. Any other questions?
On your snow program,
Yeah,
isn't there about 5 streets that you close off on a bad event?
there are, thanks, Henry. Good point. So, yeah, there are, I think, 5. Let's see if I can name them off. Center Street Hill, we often close because it's so twisty and steep. If you do lose a dump truck, lose control, or a citizen loses control, mainly, we don't want any citizens to lose control. And for us to do anything on that road, we don't want to send a dump truck through somebody's house. So Center Street, 15th, Pearl, a section of Pearl, and a section of 15th. I can't recall the others off the top of my head.
12th closes.
Yeah,
as
that
well.
sounds right. Yep. And the city has been closing those streets during snow and ice events for years. So generally speaking, the citizens, they know it's coming. Because Lord knows if we close a street that people aren't used to, it's turmoil. But we get alarmingly few calls from people angry that we've closed a street in the wintertime because most of them, they're locals, they drive that road, they get it, and they know it's the best thing to do. The other road we have closed, we don't normally close it, is Singer Hill. From right over here, right over there, down. Typically, when there's an accident, Singer Hill is on our first priority list. We de-ice the heck out of it. We sand and plow the heck out of it. But with the sharp corner right here at City Hall coming into it, and it's steep with a sharp corner at the bottom, people often find ways to crash their cars on that hunk of street. So we have closed that down before. And that one's hard. It's a difficult detour when you close Singer Hill. Not impossible, but somewhat difficult for folks. Okay,
Thank you very much.
you got it?
We did add the topic of Holcomb. Not sure which one of you wants to tackle that.
Dana said she'd be happy to talk.
Perfect.
All right, so update on Holcomb. I believe all of the storm drainage work has been completed, so for those that may have tried to use the corridor during a early wet event this season, we had an overflow out there. So the new storm system's all been installed. I think they're kind of finishing up a little bit of that. They anticipate kind of the completion of those inlets that tie to that main line out there for November. December is sidewalk work near Winston. And then part of what's caused the delay on the project is working with Lumen on relocating their overhead lines. So if you've driven the corridor, there's a new set of poles, there's an old set of poles. Lumen is still on the old set of poles, and we're waiting for them to relocate. So the project team has been having discussions about hiring a contractor to go out and move those lines, and then charging Lumen for that work, because we're at a point where it is starting to really delay the project and our ability to complete it with those poles still in the alignment of the project. We typically don't like to do that, but at this point, we're looking at what that cost would be to the city, and then would go back after Lumen for those costs. They just haven't been super cooperative. So really trying to work to get the project done. At this point, I think,
So is that for the telecom, telco and the internet lines? Because the power looks, has already been removed.
yeah, so PGE would have placed the new poles and moved their power
Underground.
lines.
Yeah, it's under,
The way that those work is, essentially the owner of the pole would put the new poles in, and then each, entity that's on those poles gets 30 days to move. So we're past the 30 days for Lumen. I'm not sure what the count is, but it's past the 30 days. And they are the only ones left. And so then the way it works is the last one off the pole is the responsible party to pull the pole.
so there is a rush to get out, number last. Well, I think the only thing that's on there is, CenturyLink and Comcast. I don't think there's anything else on there. Do you know?
I believe CenturyLink is Lumen.
That is Lumen.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
their new
So
name.
it sounds like they're the last, that's what's left, is just Lumen.
So they got telecom and then they got fiber on there.
I don't know if there's fiber on Holcomb.
Yeah, there is.
Is there?
That's how it feeds our house.
But is it
cool.
overhead or is it underground?
It's underground, and when it comes in our neighborhood, it's all brand new fiber.
Oh, cool,
It's nice fiber, real fast fiber.
great.
But somewhere they hung it up on the pole up there, going down Holcomb somewhere.
Gotcha.
So is that,
fiber in your neighborhood?
mostly Comcast?
Okay.
So once Lumen or somebody in the place of Lumen moves that, then they can come in, remove the pole. That would be part of the forced removal of the poles. Then they can complete the sidewalks and button up.
Yeah, I think they're looking at spring at this point. You know, we're into a pretty wet season and trying to pave. We usually get a window here or there, but kind of once we get this late, a big paving project isn't likely to happen. I think February, we get a window sometimes in February. But it does have to be warm enough before they pave, otherwise the pavement doesn't last, so.
Now, are they gonna put another layer on top of all the patches they've been doing? Because it looks like a massive gopher hole along the side, even though they finished up yesterday, I think it was, where they were covering up the storm drains. It's not smooth, it's, rough, but the whole street is just a checkerboard.
So I haven't been up there
You might
recently.
go up there with your cleats.
But if they're just finishing up the storm line.
Yeah.
And they'll need to pour the curb and gutter, and then they would do the paving. So if the curb and gutter is not there, then that pavement is not a permanent surface.
Yeah. Well, the sidewalks were all in for Sears, all that's all in, they got planted, we got trees in there and some grass. And the power utilities are underground in there, you can see it coming down. But from there going to the elementary school is just a gigantic trench, and patching and stuff in there, but they're still working on the sidewalks on the south side by Winston and then to that neighborhood that goes down in the canyon. I don't know what that street is there. What that one is? Where it goes over to those houses on the cliff on the left-hand side. Going down.
Oak tree.
Oak tree.
Yeah. And those sidewalks are not finished. The frames are there, but they haven't poured them. And there's one hole that they just keep digging in the road and three guys every morning staring at it, while one guy's is down in it. I don't know what they do. It's like a fishing hole or something there. And then they fill it up, and then 2 days later, they come back and they dig it up again.
So they'll continue to pour pavement for sidewalks and everything.
So you're thinking
throughout.
the road is gonna be in February, in the surface, layer?
I mean, if we end up with a dry window and it's warm enough and the contractor's ready, if they can check all the boxes on the, checklist before you can pave. But I don't think we usually see any there's usually one in October and then it's usually wait until February.
The answer is it definitely depends.
Generally gets pretty dry, it just gets bitter cold.
Right. Yeah, but again, our standard for overlays,
Yeah,
major
40
paving like
degrees.
that. Yep.
So the overall project will be completed by April?
I would need to check with the project team. I don't have that detailed of a
How
schedule.
about budget? Are we under budget? And you might have that resources to move to other projects, or if it's under budget?
I think the project is on its budget that we expected for the construction phase.
Cool.
All right, well, thank you for that update, appreciate that.
You bet.
Communication wise, for our potential next meeting, which would be December and or January, are there any topics that people want to get on the agenda for upcoming meetings?
Once we have our full team seated, I'd like to suggest that we just go over public records law as it relates to public meetings. We've done a good job not having discussions via email, CCing everyone in the group. We haven't done any of that, but just a reminder about that, and then also perhaps a reassurance to the group that we can have one-on-one meetings or even meetings of 3 members, as long as there's not a quorum outside of this body, because the question about that came up. If we wanted to have lunch with another member of TAC, would that be allowed? Just to go
imagine it
over
would.
some of that.
I mean, I
those kinds
can't
of,
imagine that y'all would not be allowed to speak with each other than the one time a month you're in this room.
Is there,
Right.
Although
is he
the-
correct though on the quorum that?
The quorum part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That could be a thing.
So just, I mean,
One-on-one,
when we
two-on-one.
have, hopefully
Yeah.
we'll have our new member soon and we'll be back up to full strength and we can just kind of go over those
Address that real quick. So everybody's on the
guidelines,
same
yeah,
page.
yeah.
Okay. Good deal. All right, any other communications or topics we want to hit? In that case,
Henry,
oh,
thanks again
yes.
for your service.
Indeed.
Thank
Well-
you, Henry.
It's been a pleasure. I get to express my opinions whether anybody appreciates it or not.
We certainly do.
I hope we'll see you in the audience, giving public comment. Don't be a stranger.
Well, he can have his Wikipedia page and
Yeah.
give us the history when we find we have a problem.
Exactly.
Sure, we'll be dialing him up for some answers.
Do you remember when?
All righty, well, with that, thank you, and we are adjourned.
Awesome.
Oh, about the